People don't fear change as much as they fear loss. And I'm here to tell you, the new education program tries to take all of the best parts of Toastmasters and retain those. It just rearranges them in a way that we hope is more pleasing to members, and will create that Toastmasters experience. And I want to especially tell you that the club experience changes very little in terms of the way you organize and execute a club meeting. What does change is the way that members access resources and the way that we evaluate and mentor and do some other things like that. Next slide. This is the biggest change to the Toastmasters education program since Ralph Smedley wrote the basic training manual in the 40s. But when World Headquarters was tasked by the Board of Directors for Toastmasters International to revitalize the education program and to revitalize the education portion of the program while maintaining an emphasis and increasing an emphasis on leadership, they went back and looked at all the materials and all of the content and other sort of stuff, and they began to reimagine the education program with an online component, and they put it into pieces that they felt like would build skills and competencies for Toastmasters in a more structured and even manner. Of course, Ralph Smedley is the founder of Toastmasters, and you can see his quote here on communications. This is all about using communication to unleash our individual potential as Toastmasters. Next.
Janet?
Yes.
We can't see.
You can't see this? Am I in your way?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can move off to the side even further. Sure. Thank you. And please, if there's anything that you want to ask about or comment on as I go through this, don't hesitate to do so. You won't throw me off track. I've got a prepared script that I'm supposed to follow more or less, and I'm following it more rather than less. But I do deviate because I counted up the number of words they provided, and they have like 2 hours worth of talking alone in this script. They're very thorough, but I doubt that they actually put someone in front of an audience and had them say every word that they provided in this scripted briefing. And we've probably all experienced scripted briefings if we've done any of the Toastmasters success series types of briefings or improve your club types of briefings and things like that. And I know I always deviate significantly from what they provide and use it as a basis. So, this is all about how we learn. And what they did was survey current Toastmasters and survey audiences from which they think that they will draw Toastmasters in the future. And they asked them what they want. And they want to learn in a structured process that allows us to build our skills progressively. They want to build comprehension for a variety of circumstances in our personal life, in our professional lives, in our community. They wanted to make use of people's limited, valuable time. So they wanted to provide the most value for the time that Toastmaster spends studying a particular skill or competency and then applying it through their Toastmaster experience. And they wanted to have an enjoyable learning process for everyone. Next. So you can see here, starting with the basic training that Ralph Smedley wrote, our education programs evolved into the 2 tracks we have today. We have a communications track and a leadership track. We start out with the Competent Communicator Manual, the Competent Leader Manual, and And then finishing those, we move on to various advanced manuals. We have some choice on what we do in some of those areas. But we work through advanced communicator, bronze, silver, and gold, advanced leader, bronze and silver, and ultimately the distinguished Toastmaster. Pathway sweeps away all of those things except distinguished Toastmaster. They're still at the end of the path. You know, the journey can take you to distinguished Toastmaster. But in Pathways, you'll journey in a different way than we have journeyed so far in our experience. Who here has heard of Pathways or is familiar with Pathways? That's good, because after today, you'll be familiar with Pathways. You'll know it's coming, and you'll be able to go online and begin to look at the resources that are currently available. When the rollout occurs, then you'll actually be able to go in and use it. And I'll talk about how we're going to maintain the current education program for those of us who've already started along that path, and offer to new members the new education program. Or should anyone want to abandon their current quest for whatever their education and leadership goals might be in the current program and switch to Pathways, you can restart there and work your way through. There is no transferring of any of the accomplishments in what will become the legacy education program, our current education program, into the new program. So even if you're, you're where I am, you have to look at it and say, do I start over again, or do I finish Advanced Leader Gold and Advanced Leader Silver and become a distinguished Toastmaster through the current program, or do I start over with an icebreaker speech at level 1 in the path that I select and work my way through the new program? Next. Ralph Smedley contends that we learn in moments of enjoyment. I know for many of us, standing in front of an audience and speaking is one of our greatest fears, but by experiencing and doing it, we build a level of confidence that allows us to do that. And I get joy out of hearing other people tell their stories. And that's what brings me back to Toastmasters. If you told me when I started in June of 2013 that I would still be in Toastmasters and still doing this, I would have said, that's not likely. I'll finish the Competent Communicator. I might finish the Competent Leader. I want to learn what this Toastmasters thing is about because I've heard about it. I want to improve my basic communication skills, but I don't see myself hanging around for 4 or 5 years doing this. And why are these members of my club hanging around for 5, 10, 20, 30 years in Toastmasters? But then you learn it's the fellowship, it's the interesting things that you learn, it's interacting in the club environment, it's contributing to your club by taking on roles, taking on leadership roles, and your officers of this club are now challenged to help this club make that transition to the new Pathways education program, and they need your support. Speaking today primarily members, and this presentation is geared toward getting the members started. But after this, I'll be here to help your Vice President of Education, your President, and other officers as they begin to actually work the program. And as I said, there's a lot of complexity and detail there, as there is with the current Toastmasters program. Imagine as a brand new member, you're trying to understand all of the parts that are out there in Toastmasters. At least that much is still there in the new education program and more. Next. So as I told you, the World Headquarters directed the Board of Directors in 2010 to revitalize the education program. So here we are 7 years later, and we're finally rolling this out in the second region. And this is the first rollout that isn't covered in secrecy and hidden away from the entire Toastmasters community, because during that time that they were building this and prototyping it and experimenting with it, they didn't want people to get any false impressions for what it is because it's still changing. And I will tell you, it's not finished even today. They're going to build more projects on top of the current projects that exist after the rollout. But they want the experience of the rollout to help them. They haven't created all the education materials in all 8 languages that they intend to support. We're fortunate that we do have a significant amount of material in English. So what were they trying to accomplish when they wanted to revitalize the education program? They wanted to create high value for Toastmasters. They wanted to maintain the essence of the club meeting and the fun that we find in Toastmasters. They wanted to be able to customize the Toastmasters experience and the skills and competencies that a Toastmaster builds to people's individual desires. They wanted a program that was more flexible, provided more options for people, more choice. They wanted to hone the nature of the projects so that they were competency-based and clearly focused on a successive building of competencies as an individual progresses through the levels. They wanted to provide many more resources. So there's videos and opportunities to interact with your club online. There's content. So when you go to do an icebreaker speech, for instance, and you're a new member, you actually can watch some little video clips of Toastmasters talking about their icebreaker speech. And you can get guidance about how people have organized their icebreaker speech and other sorts of tips like that. Before you even do that, you go through a process of self-evaluation so that you can understand where you think you stand now with respect to skills, and then revisit that through the process so you can see whether you're progressing or not. It is possible for a member to select to use professionally printed manuals like we currently use instead of the online experience, and I'm still not sure exactly how things get from the manual to the online system, other than the Vice President of Education entering in information, validating when a person achieves levels and those types of things. But there is that opportunity to choose to experience Toastmasters primarily online and access a deep set of materials there, or to also have printed materials and to work through the printed books for the particular path that you choose. In the end, it's meant to be meaningful and effective evaluation. Evaluation has a lot more resources to help us to do evaluations. I've seen the competitors for the evaluation contest for this club last year, and this club does evaluations well. Hopefully Toastmasters International will help your new members to climb that learning curve and be able to do those evaluations better. So Pathways was designed for you, the Toastmaster, and to provide you the things that Toastmasters International believes that you want. Next. So as it's saying, you choose the areas that you want to concentrate in. There are 10 different pathways, and we'll talk about those. And you're able to, through choosing various paths, to tailor the experience for yourself and to select the experiences which you think are most applicable for yourself. There's greater access to materials. There's a greater depth of materials, more materials to choose from. And with each skill or competency that you're building, there's an attempt to connect that to the real world and how we use that in the real world. I know in my club we've had members who come and they sort of enjoy Toastmasters, and they're doing some speeches and they're working through the Confident Communicator, and but they haven't really figured out, you know, where the value is. Most of the value for them is in the socialization and that. And then suddenly they take that skill into their work environment or somewhere else, and they realize they do know how to run a meeting better than they did before Toastmasters. They do know how to answer impromptu questions more effectively. They do know how to prepare a presentation or a speech and to give it. And when they see that value, that's when they really begin to dig in and to push to gain more competency and more skill. So the important thing about choice is you can use electronic materials or you can use printed materials for those who still prefer the printed materials. And you get to choose the path that you'll take, the focus that you'll have for building these competencies and skills. Pathways is intended to be very dynamic. There's a path for everyone, and the new program is going to leverage the strengths of our traditional Toastmasters education program. You're not losing most of those things. You're just seeing them reorganized and refreshed and reimagined. Next. And next. So there are 5 core competencies that Toastmasters International identified that Toastmasters provides. The first 4 are things that we learn. The 5th is that confidence that we build through our experience, through the attempts that we make, and those types of things. And those are maintained in each of the 10 paths. Next. So here, what they've done is show which of these core competencies, whether it's public speaking, whether it's interpersonal communication, whether it's management or strategic leadership, that is emphasized in a particular path. And I can read to you about each of these paths. Is there a path that someone's particularly interested in?
Motivation.
Motivation, okay, let me find what we have to say about the motivation path. So, motivational strategies helps you build your skills as a powerful and effective communicator. You'll focus on building connections with others, leading small groups, and public speaking. So you can imagine projects, speeches, and leadership projects that are oriented around doing those things in order to help you to learn more about how to be motivational, especially at that strategic level. Another example might be presentation mastery. That helps you build your skills as an accomplished public speaker. You'll focus on your connection with the audience members and effective public speaking techniques and those types of things. So for each of these, there's this bumper sticker that I'm giving you, and then as you dig into it, there is a rich set of projects, mostly speeches, but also in some cases serving in functionary roles or organizing a speech contest for your club, those types of things. Those things we've done in Toastmasters for decades now, they're still there. Yes, ma'am.
The coloring, it's different weights of color, like the 5 is very light. Is that deliberate? Does that have some implication here? The 5 is...
Yeah, I'm sure it's deliberate. Part of it is that they wanted to emphasize that they're not teaching confidence.
Okay.
You know, confidence is something you build within yourself. You may learn techniques that help you to improve your confidence, but it's not something that we teach directly like public speaking.
Got it.
You know, where we can give you a formula for public speaking. All the advice in the world won't make you confident when you walk up here until you build that within yourself. And so confidence cuts across all of these. You'll see there's no 5 listed there. That's part of the color coding. Other parts is what's emphasized or what's important there. You know, yes ma'am, yes sir.
What if your goals include a variety of these things, and so you might, you're interested in personal persuasion and innovative planning. How do you coordinate that?
You'll take an assessment where they ask about your preferences, and they'll recommend up to three paths for you, and you can select 1 or 2 of those. Certainly, you know, we have Toastmasters in my club who've done virtually every advanced manual offered. And DTM's 3 times over because they've gone back and done 3 different high performance leadership projects and other things like that. And with Pathways, you can certainly travel down many of these paths. And you're expected to travel multiple paths. But if you think about this, if you only take 2 paths out of 10, you've got 10 to choose 2 paths to choose from. That's a lot of paths. And so there's a lot of opportunities. For example, if you select the first one, you can select any of the other 9. You know, if you select the second one, you can select any of the number 8. So 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5. There's a lot of paths, combinations of just 2 paths to choose. And that's where you get the ability to focus in areas that you're most interested in. Yes, ma'am.
So does each path have 10 projects in it at our current manual or no?
No, it varies. I'm about to get to that, but there are 5 levels. There's level 1, which is a core to all of the paths, and it includes things like an icebreaker speech. But they will also customize the types of level 1 projects you do for the particular path that you've chosen. But you work through level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and then level 5 is Distinguished Toastmasters Award, and that comes with a capstone project, which you might think of being similar to a high performance leadership project, plus some other things. But the number of projects depends on the specific content. It's roughly equivalent, but not exactly. Yes, ma'am.
How long does it take to finish one of these pathways?
I do not know. And you know, we've just rolled out Pathways as a pilot program, and Region 2, which includes District 101, is now in the process of rolling out Pathways. And there are several more regions to roll out Pathways before everyone is rolled out. I'm sure there's someone racing right now toward DTM through Pathways, but the last I read, they hadn't fully defined all of the requirements of the DTM level at that last level 5. Sir?
Jack, how soon will we be able to go online and actually see all of this?
You'll be able to go online and see some information about Pathways right now. When it rolls out, then you will have access to Basecamp, which is the place that you go at the Toastmasters.org website in order to log in and experience Pathways. One thing I'm supposed to ask everyone to do is, please make sure that you're able to log into Toastmasters International. Because if you can't log into Toastmasters.org, you can't take step 1. But we do not have access to the full program. You will see there an example of the icebreaker that so you can get a taste for it, and there are videos on there where people who are working through Pathways now talk about their experiences with the rollout and other sorts of things. There's a good amount of information. I'm going to provide your Vice President of Education, your club officers, with some tools that they will need. I'll be holding virtual support sessions for the Vice Presidents of Education, the 8 clubs that I have, about 15 times between now and December. And taking their questions to World Headquarters and getting them answered and resolving issues. Yes, ma'am.
So when does that mean the rollout actually starts?
So the
After
goal is for
December?
70% of the clubs in the region to receive this Pathways Guide briefing. Once that occurs, that's the trigger for Toastmasters International to activate the rollout for the districts that are in Region 2.
So there's no date? Or today.
the date they're saying is early September. That's what they're expecting. This is my second of 8 clubs that I'm briefing. By early September, I will have briefed about 5 of my 8 clubs, so I won't be quite at 70%. But there are districts that are way ahead of District 101, which right now has a very small percentage of clubs briefed. Sir? Did you have a question? Did you have a question, ma'am?
Yes, I do. So this is my first time here in Toastmaster. Is there any degree of complexity for each one of these pathways? For example, I'm looking at presentation mastery, it says number 1. So that number coincides with public speaking. Is that the focus of that particular pathway?
It's one of the core competencies of that pathway is intended to support a member in building
So
good
if I were
projects.
new, it would be wise for me to look at presentation mastery first?
What I would suggest doing is they give you a quiz about your strengths, weaknesses, and preferences, and then they make a recommendation. And then if you look at the 3 paths that they recommend and you don't see the one you want to start with, then you might read in more detail about other paths. Like if you're very intrigued about interpersonal communications types of things and you see a path that supports that, and that's where you want to go first, then you should go with what calls you and what you think is going to provide the value you're looking for in Toastmasters. Sir?
Is the assessment done online and you're given immediate feedback?
The assessment's done online, you're given immediate feedback, or if you choose to do things by the manual method, then you don't have that immediate feedback. But there's a tremendous amount of the material and the interaction for the member that's online. And that includes, when you get an evaluation, being able to scan your evaluation or take a photo of it and attach it online so it's there as a record of the evaluation you got. Or to go online and actually fill in the evaluation. You can give your evaluator a PDF file that they can print, or they can type the evaluation into the PDF file. There's a lot of nuances to trying to take this primarily online. But their intent is to provide, most of that sort of thing online to give you, for example, for your assessment, immediate feedback.
May I ask a follow-up to that?
Oh, yes.
You're talking about the online side of it. With regard to club management, will all the resources that have historically been handled either internally here at the club level, some of it being online, is that all going to become somewhat standardized now?
What will be online is the information the member has access to about their own progress and other things. And then your president, your vice president of education, your secretary will have the ability to access member information in order to do things like validate that they've completed all the projects that they've put into the system at level 1, for instance, and they've achieved level 1. Also online will be the ability for you to give badges and feedback to other members of your club. So, while we might pass around a piece of paper in the meeting that says, interesting speech, I think that your introduction could be stronger if you did this, you might go online after the club meeting and provide that feedback to an individual. But as I expect will happen, clubs will look at processes and approaches, and they will favor certain approaches for organizing and executing their meeting and getting the information into the system online. What it doesn't do for you is prepare your agenda or do those other types of things that the club has to do. So, role assignments, preparing the agenda, those types of things are not part of the online support. Next. These questions are great, by the way. And I'm so much happier to have the questions than to read to you. So when you take a path, you'll work through 5 different levels. each level increases in complexity, so your question about complexity, you know, they understand that anybody might be starting in any of the 10 paths at level 1. And so you should expect level 1 to have the least complexity, to focus on the basics. And as we've all experienced in our Toastmasters experience, it all starts with one speech, the icebreaker. But these levels are one of the big differences between Pathways and the current education program. The levels are really encapsulate advanced communication, advanced leader types of skills. And there's no saying that if you're at level 2, you've finished the equivalent of CC and CL. There's no equivalency that was intended in this. But you might, you know, think of the 5 levels and think of all those different 3-letter combinations, ALB, ALC, ACG types of things. They're captured at various levels, level 3 and level 4 in particular for the more advanced material. Any questions about the levels? You can see some of the project types that you'd expect to see at those levels. So at level 1, an icebreaker, and you learn about evaluation feedback, and these are just examples. This is not the complete list. Yes, ma'am.
I have a quick question. So, within each of the 10 tracks, you've got the 5 different levels. Does that mean that when you say finish your dynamic leadership and you go on to effective coaching, you go back to a level 1?
You will, and so you might have a person who's at level 2 in one path and in level 3 at another path, and their highest level achievement would be level 3. But in that other path, they finish level 3 and level 4.
Do more than one path at the same time?
You can.
Got it.
And you might want to start with one path, and then, once you've completed level 1, you might want to combine work in multiple paths. Yes, ma'am.
How many paths do you need to take all the way to level 5 to become Distinguished Toastmaster?
I believe it's 2, but I need to actually get in there, and we've asked that question. The answer we've gotten back is we have not finalized the requirements for DTM, but we'll have those to you soon. Yes.
Within each level, are there 10 projects or things for each of those levels, or it varies?
It's not like the current program, like for the CC and the CL, there's 10 projects. For the advanced manuals, there's 5 projects, and then there's some things you have to do, like serve as a district officer if you want to get credit for advanced leader, silver, those types of things. So there are a set of projects, and the level of effort for that set of projects is roughly equivalent to that level in the other pathways, but the number's not fixed like that.
Since we have a lot of new members here, would you explain what DTM means?
Okay, yeah, DTM, in the current education program, a member starts out with a competent communicator and competent leader manual. And when they finish the 10 projects in the competent communicator manual, we call them a CC, competent communicator. If they want to continue along that education track, they do various speeches and projects out of advanced manuals, and the accomplishments are acknowledged with things like advanced communicator bronze, advanced communicator silver, advanced communicator gold. On the leadership track, of course, there's the competent leader manual and the CL. Then there's the advanced leader bronze and the advanced leader silver. Advanced leader silver plus advanced communicator gold equals Distinguished Toastmaster, DTM. The Pathways education program and the Pathways learning experience keeps DTM, Distinguished Toastmaster, as the ultimate accomplishment in the Toastmasters education program, but changes all those other designations, takes those away, and organizes things into levels along the paths. Yes, ma'am.
So to be clear, even if you've been doing Toastmasters for quite some time, nothing is applicable. Everybody's starting fresh as if they were a new participant in this in Toastmasters.
When they enter Pathways, they start fresh. Now, for those who are where I am or where you might be, The current education program will continue to be offered for 2 years after the last district rolls out. So right now, we're talking 2021, 2022 timeframe before that last region rolls out, the last district is in Pathways, and that clock starts for the 2 years. So there's a comfortable amount of time for anybody, even if you just made one icebreaker speech, to work as far into the education leadership tracks of the current education program as you'd like. That may mean you have to accelerate a little bit and get some of those requirements a little more quickly. You can't go at a leisurely pace and take 10 years. But the program is still there for you, and it's a challenge for the clubs to support both education programs during this transition period. And everyone will have to make that choice of, do I start out, if you're relatively new, you've done a few speeches, you've done a few projects in the CL manual, do I just want to start over in Pathways, or do I want to continue with this current education program? But the two don't mix together in any way. They stand separate as education programs, but they occur within the same Toastmasters meeting. Yes, ma'am.
So that means that the VP Education has 2 different programs to track.
Yes, ma'am. As if the VP Education's role was not significant enough. And I will tell you, I've served as president, vice president of education, vice president of membership, vice president of PR. The hardest job is VP of Education. The one that you have to engage on every meeting and engage with every member is vice president of education. If your burden wasn't heavy enough, now you have Pathways and the current education program, but it's not going to be so bad. The members are going to be putting information about their projects that they completed at each level in there. You'll just be validating that they actually occurred. Any question about the levels and the types of projects associated with levels? Sir?
Jack, let's say you had a relatively new member who just completed speech number 4. Would that person then be looking to continue on in Pathways?
That would be his or her choice.
So you could continue doing it manually until 10, let's say?
If they wanted to accomplish CC and then start over in Pathways, that's what they would do. They would do the 10 speeches.
Okay.
If they want to stop and say, I'm going to jump into the new program,
Yeah.
then they would go in, take their assessment, pick their path, and start at level 1, and they'd step up and they would schedule an icebreaker speech, and they'd give an icebreaker speech according to Pathways, and they'd get evaluated in Pathways rather than in a CC manual, and they would start over. Sir?
What's the mechanics of that process in terms of you know, is this all online, or is it interaction with, how does it work?
I'm going to talk about that more as we go through the briefing. There's a significant amount of capability online, but of course you have to take things from the meeting to the online, and that's where, sometimes it gets complex and challenging. Because you're still going to get the oral evaluation that you get for a speech here at the meeting. You're still going to get a written evaluation that's going to end up in the Pathways system. And it's the mechanics of getting it into that system. Now they're going to allow you to do things like print that evaluation, give it to your evaluator, have the evaluator fill it out, take a picture of it or scan it and put it and attach it into your profile in Basecamp. And those types of things. But yes, there's going to be nuances and differences, and there's a learning period that's going to be associated with this, because I can't stand here and tell you I know, because I haven't done it yet in the system, because even I don't have access to the live system until the rollout occurs. And that's why we'll be doing 15 virtual support sessions for the VPEs every week. They're going to call in, or they're going to go online, and they're going to tell me what challenges they've had with Pathways, what questions have come up, what issues they're trying to resolve. I'll use the resources I have to help them resolve that, but I'll also go to World Headquarters and to the other Pathways guides in the district and ask the questions. We have a database hundreds of questions that have already been compiled and answered, but we expect to have many more. Sir?
Your test participants so far, generally, what have they mostly struggled with?
I don't have a good answer to that question. They signed non-disclosure agreements in the first region that rolled out. And it wasn't a full region, it was a relatively small number of districts and clubs. And they just began to talk about their experience in the last few months.
Just out of curiosity, what's the secrecy about?
Well, there was secrecy during the initial period because the program was changing as they learned what worked and what didn't work. So they were doing a pilot test, and Toastmasters International has always operated this way, where they want it to be as good as possible before they put it in front of the membership and the clubs. And so, they just asked people not to talk outside of the group that they were working with while they were rolling this out. Other questions? Okay, so moving on, next. Currently, we have 59 projects in Pathways, and they expect to create more once the rollout's complete. So they've got enough content, they feel, to roll it out. There's significant content in English, but the total number of projects will increase as they finish the rollout and as they build more content. Another area of focus is obviously creating content in the other 7 languages that are the primary 8 languages supported by Toastmasters. But all the projects and all the resources are available online in English